43 students, taken by police, handed to a cartel, disappeared, and then, for over a decade, covered up, lied about, and buried deeper than the bodies were ever found. By the local government, by the state government, by the federal government, by the Mexican army itself. This is not a story about a crime that was solved. This is a story about a crime that the people in charge of solving it committed. And the parents, the mothers and fathers who have been marching through the streets of Mexico City every single month for over 10 years holding photographs of their sons, who still do not know what happened to their children. Before we talk about what happened to them, you need to understand who they were. Because the Mexican government spent years trying to make you forget that they were human beings, that they had names, that they had mothers waiting for them to come home. The Raúl Isidro Burgos Rural Teachers College in Ayotzinapa, Guerrero. It is not a prestigious university. There are no marble halls or scholarship funds here. It is a small, underfunded college in one of the most violent and impoverished states in all of Mexico, and it exists for one specific purpose: to train young men from extremely poor rural communities to become teachers, to go back to villages like the ones they came from and teach children who have almost nothing. The students who attend Ayotzinapa are not wealthy. Many are from indigenous communities. Some work part-time jobs to pay their modest fees. They are politically active. The college has a proud tradition of left-wing student activism going back decades, and the students participate in protests, marches, and demonstrations as part of their education. They are, by the standards of any government that is not afraid of its own young people, exactly the kind of citizens a democracy should want. 63 students set out that evening of September 26, 2014. Their plan is simple and routine: commandeer buses in Iguala to use for transportation to a march in Mexico City on October 2, commemorating the 1968 Tlatelolco massacre, when Mexican government troops killed student protesters in the capital. Taking buses without paying is a tradition among students from the rural colleges across Mexico. It is accepted, tolerated, normal. They have no idea that on this particular night, in this particular city, something is waiting for them. Iguala is controlled by its mayor, José Luis Abarca, and his wife Maria de los Angels Pine de Villa, whose family has deep ties to the Guerreros Unidos cartel, a violent criminal organization that operates throughout Guerrero. The cartel moves heroin along this exact corridor, loading it onto passenger buses at stations like the one in Iguala, and smuggling it northward all the way to cells in Chicago, Illinois. The mayor and his wife are not just aware of this, they are part of it. On the night of September 26, Maria de los Angels is giving a speech at a municipal event. The mayor is paranoid, terrified that the student protesters will disrupt his wife's event and generate negative press. He calls the local police chief. He gives an order: stop the buses. What happens next unfolds over 3 hours. 3 hours in which the local police, the state police, the federal police, and the Mexican army, all of them, are active, communicating and present. And 43 young men vanish. The students board 5 commandeered buses and begin heading out of Iguala toward the highway that will take them back to Ayotzinapa. They split into 3 groups traveling different routes. Iguala municipal police begin pursuing them almost immediately. At approximately 9:30 p.m., police intercept the first group of students on Juan N. Alvarez Street. Without warning, without any attempt at negotiation, without any legal justification, the police open fire on the buses. Students scramble to the floor screaming. Windows explode inward. A student named Aldo Gutierrez Solano is shot in the head. He survives, but he never regains consciousness, and he will spend the rest of his life in a vegetative state in a hospital bed in Guerrero. The police drag students off the buses. They handcuff them. They load them into police vehicles. Students who are not yet caught run into the darkness, hiding in buildings and fields, calling each other on cell phones in whispers. Where are you? Are you safe? What is happening? A second attack occurs at another location. Students in a different bus are also stopped, shot at, and arrested. A third group, traveling in a bus carrying members of a football team who are not even Ayotzinapa students, is also attacked. 3 of those football players are killed. One of them, a 15-year-old boy, has his face skinned off and his eyes gouged out. His body is left on the street as a message. Throughout all of this, for the entire 3 hours, the Mexican Army's 27th Infantry Battalion is stationed less than 2 kilometers from where the attacks are occurring. They are monitoring radio communications. They know what is happening. They do not intervene. Later, an independent investigation will prove that Army officers were not just monitoring. They were present at some of the attack sites. They watched. They reported. They did nothing. By 3 a.m. on September 27, it is over. The buses are empty. 6 people are dead, 3 students and 3 football players. 43 students are in the custody of Iguala Municipal Police. And then they are handed over, transferred from police custody to members of the Guerreros Unidos cartel, driven away in the dark. The institutions tasked with investigating crimes of this nature, journalist John Gibler, who interviewed the survivors, concluded, are the institutions carrying out the crimes. Not a corrupt officer, not a corrupt mayor. The local police, the state police, the federal police, the Mexican Army, all working together, all using radio communication, all using their official vehicles, wearing their official uniforms. Acting in utter impunity, 43 students. Taken alive by the Mexican state, handed to a cartel, gone. 6 weeks after the 43 students disappear, the Mexican government holds a press conference. And instead of delivering justice, they deliver a story, a carefully constructed, officially endorsed lie that they call the historical truth. And they expect the parents, the country, and the world to simply accept it and move on. November 7, 2014. Attorney General Jesus Murillo Karam stands before the press and announces the government's conclusion. The 43 students, he says, were taken by the Guerreros Unidos cartel to a garbage dump in the town of Cocula. There they were murdered, their bodies burned in a massive fire that lasted all night, and their ashes and bone fragments were placed in plastic bags and thrown into the San Juan River. Case closed, the government implies. Tragic, terrible, but solved. There is one problem: the story is scientifically impossible. Furthermore, the confessions on which the government's entire theory rests, confessions from arrested cartel members describing exactly this scenario, were later found to have been obtained under torture. The confessing witnesses retract their statements. Their lawyers document injuries consistent with sustained physical abuse during interrogation. The historical truth is not truth, it is theater, performed by a government that is terrified of what the real truth would reveal. Then, in August 2022, the government's own Truth Commission releases its report. The commission, established by President López Obrador to finally get to the bottom of the case, concludes that the disappearance of the 43 students was a crime of state, not a crime by criminals. A crime by the state itself. The Army, the commission's leader Alejandro Encinas states publicly, not only knew what was happening in real time on September 26 and 27, 2014, it was also present where it had denied being. And it did not hand over 800 key documents even when the President of the Republic instructed them to do so. The Mexican Army withheld evidence from its own president. For 8 years. Every single month, without exception, for over 10 years, the parents of the 43 missing students have marched through the streets of Mexico City. Rain, heat, pandemic, political changes. It does not matter. They march. They hold their sons above their heads in photographs. They say the same thing they have been saying since September 2014. They took them alive. We want them back alive. In April 2015, 14 parents traveled across the United States in what they called Caravana 43, visiting 43 American cities in 19 states, ending with a march to the United Nations headquarters in New York City. They are funded entirely by donations from ordinary people in each city they visit. They are trying to make the world remember their sons' names when Mexico's government clearly wishes everyone would forget. Bernabe Abrajan is the father of Adan Abrajan de la Cruz, one of the 43. He is a farmer from a small village in Guerrero. In an interview several years after the disappearance, he says, quietly, "They say our sons are dead. I do not accept that. Until I see my son with my own eyes, until I bury him with my own hands, I will not accept that. I will never stop looking." In September 2025, on the 11th anniversary of the disappearance, another father dies. Donato Abarca Beltran, the father of missing student Luis Angel Abarca, passes away without ever learning what happened to his son. He is not the first parent to die waiting. He will not be the last. What gives the parents' movement its extraordinary moral force is their refusal to be co-opted. Multiple Mexican presidents have tried to manage them. López Obrador promised them justice and then protected the military when it refused to cooperate. Current President Claudia Sheinbaum speaks of new lines of investigation that have not yet materialized. The parents have heard every promise. They believe none of them until they see results. This fight is not over, says Joaquina Garcia, the mother of missing student Martin Getsemani Sanchez. And it will not be over until we know the truth. More than 80 people have been arrested in connection with the case. Former presidents have been investigated. Military commanders have been charged. A former attorney general is under house arrest. A judge is in custody for destroying surveillance footage. And yet, not a single person has been convicted and imprisoned specifically for what happened to the 43 students. Not one. In the days after the attack, as the scale of what happened becomes clear, arrests begin quickly. Iguala Mayor José Luis Abarca and his wife Maria de los Angels Pine de Villa flee. They are caught on November 4, 2014 in Mexico City, hiding in a rented apartment. The local police chief also flees and is arrested. 44 of the officers arrested in connection with the case are police officers. The Guerreros Unidos cartel members who received the students are arrested. Confessions are taken by the methods we have already discussed. But arresting the local officials and cartel members is the easy part, and it is precisely the part that the government is comfortable with. Because it points the finger at corrupt local politicians and criminals without touching the military or the federal government. The harder arrests, the ones that really matter, take years to happen, and some never happen at all. Tomás Zirón de Lucio, the head of the government's Criminal Investigations Agency, who is accused of fabricating evidence, torturing witnesses, and personally orchestrating the cover-up of what really happened, flees Mexico in 2020 and is given refuge in Israel. As of 2025, Mexico has formally requested his extradition. Israel has not complied. Tomás Zirón remains free. In May 2025, a new arrest shakes the case open again. Mexican authorities detained 79-year-old retired Judge Lambertina Guilana Marin, who served as president of the Superior Court of Justice of Guerrero at the time of the disappearances. She is arrested for the disappearance of surveillance camera recordings from the Palace of Justice in Iguala. recordings that could have shown exactly what happened the night of September 26. Someone erased them. Investigators now believe it was deliberate. The judge denies everything. In June 2025, Mexico's Supreme Court orders the Attorney General's office to publicly release the full investigation file into the case. After 11 years of official secrecy around crucial evidence, a court finally orders transparency. In the United States, there are convictions, but not for the disappearances. 2 members of Guerrero's Unidos plead guilty to heroin smuggling charges related to the bus route used on the night of the attack. Adan Casarrubias Salgado, one of the cartel brothers who ran the operation, is sentenced to 11 years in a U.S. federal prison in 2025. Pablo Vega Cuvas, the Chicago cellhead who received the heroin smuggled on those buses, also receives a 10-year sentence. They are convicted for drugs, not for the 43 students. Of the 43 students who disappeared on September 26, 2014, the remains of 3 have been identified. 3. In 11 years of searching, excavating, testing, and investigating, 3 names can now be confirmed as dead. The other 40 are officially listed as missing. Their fate is unknown. And their families still do not know whether to mourn or to keep searching. December 6, 2014, the first confirmed identification. Alexander Mora Venancio, 19 years old, from the small town of El Perican in Guerrero. Forensic specialists at the University of Innsbruck in Austria, brought in because no one trusts Mexican government forensic labs to handle this case honestly, confirmed that a sample of bone fragments collected from the San Juan River matches Alexander's DNA, verified against samples from his father and brothers. It is the worst possible news, and it is the only honest news the parents receive from any official investigation for years. 2 more students are eventually confirmed dead through DNA testing: Josevani Guerrero de la Cruz and Christian Alfonso Rodriguez Telember. Their remains are also identified through forensic analysis by international specialists, not by Mexican government laboratories. As of 2025, those are the only 3 confirmed deaths. The Mexican government's official position is that there is no indication any of the other 40 are alive. But without bodies, without identified remains, without a location, the parents refuse to accept death certificates. They refuse to close the cases. They refuse to stop searching. Mexico is a country that has swallowed its dead. During the drug war, more than 100,000 people have been disappeared, taken, and never found. The 43 students are not unique in that terrible sense. What makes them different is that they are known, named, documented. Their families refuse to let them become a statistic. "We search because they were alive when they were taken," one parent says at a vigil in 2024. "The government took them alive. The government should tell us where they are." Here is the part of this story that the Mexican government most desperately does not want you to understand, because it does not just implicate a corrupt mayor or a local cartel. It goes all the way to the institution that is supposed to be Mexico's last line of defense against exactly this kind of violence. In September 2022, 8 years after the disappearances, a massive hack of the Mexican military's internal communications system, known as the Guacamaya leaks, releases hundreds of thousands of documents onto the internet. Journalists and investigators immediately begin searching them for references to Ayotzinapa. What they find is devastating. Army documents confirm that the 27th Infantry Battalion had an informant embedded within the Guerrero's Unidos cartel, an informant who was present during the attack on the students and reported back to Army command in real time. The Army knew what was happening as it happened. It knew the students had been taken, it knew who took them, and it did nothing. The documents also confirm what independent investigators had alleged for years, that Army personnel were physically present at some of the locations where the students were attacked and detained. They were not bystanders who stumbled onto the scene. They were part of the infrastructure of that night, even if their precise role remains disputed. The 2022 Truth Commission report goes further. It names a specific Army colonel, José Rodriguez Perez, commander of the 27th Battalion, as having ordered 6 of the students to be killed after they were kept alive in a warehouse for several days following the attack. 6 students, according to the commission, were held alive for days, then killed on the order of a military officer. As of 2025, the special prosecutor overseeing the Ayotzinapa investigation has resigned, leaving the investigation without leadership. The IACHR describes the situation as a case that has stalled. An expert panel sent to help investigate quit in 2023, citing a lack of information, secrecy, and hidden evidence. The investigation is, in the words of one parent, 3 years lost. September 26, 2025. 11 years to the day. The parents of the 43 missing students of Ayotzinapa march again through Mexico City. They have been doing this every month without fail for 11 years. Some of them are in their 70s now. Some of them have developed health problems from the years of stress and grief. One father died this year, died without knowing what happened to his son. And they are still marching. Here is what we know for certain in 2025, 11 years later. 43 students boarded buses in Iguala, Guerrero, on the night of September 26, 2014. They were attacked by local police acting on orders from the mayor. They were handed over to the Guerrero's Unidos cartel. They were disappeared. The Mexican government constructed a false version of events, a lie it called the historical truth, that was scientifically disproven within a year. The Mexican army was present, monitoring, and possibly involved, and then withheld 800 documents from investigators for years. Only 3 of the 43 students have ever been identified. 40 are still missing. Nobody has been convicted for their disappearance, not one person. And here is what else we know. This is not a story about Mexico being a lawless place where terrible things happen and nothing can be done. Mexico has a Supreme Court that in June 2025 ordered the government to release the full investigation file. Mexico has parents who have kept this case alive through sheer will when every institution tried to bury it. Mexico has journalists and forensic scientists and human rights lawyers who have fought for 11 years to get to the truth. This is a story about what happens when a government decides it is more important to protect the military than to tell a mother what happened to her son. Every month, they march, with photographs of boys who wanted to become teachers, who came from villages with nothing and went to the only school that would take them, who boarded a bus on a September night and were taken by the people whose job it was to protect them. They took them alive. Their parents want them back alive. And until Mexico tells the truth, the real truth, not the historical truth, that demand will not stop. That is the story of the 43 students of Ayotzinapa, a story that is not over, a case that is not closed, a truth that has not yet been told. And parents who have not stopped marching for 11 years and show no sign of stopping. If this documentary made you feel something, anger, grief, disbelief, then it has done its job. Because these stories only survive when people keep talking about them, when people refuse to let them be forgotten. So please give this video a like, subscribe to Crime Case Vault, and share it with someone who does not know this story yet. Someone who should. And here is the question I want you to answer in the comments below. If Mexico's own government was involved in the disappearance of its own students, who is left to trust with finding the truth? Drop your answer below, because this conversation needs to happen. New documentary coming soon. Until then, remember the 43. Thanks for watching.